Imagine losing the person you've spent your entire life with. This documentary is based on a real story shared online. Then, just months later, someone you've never met tells you they'll love you forever. For one 81-year-old man, that's exactly what happened. After the death of his wife, he found himself alone for the first time in decades. His children worried about him. His friends checked in whenever they could. But loneliness has a way of changing people. And someone was paying attention. It started with a simple message online. A woman reached out. She was kind. She listened. She asked about his life, his family, and how he was coping after losing his wife. For the first time in months, he felt like someone truly understood him. The conversations became daily. Morning messages, late-night phone calls, promises about a future together. His family noticed something had changed. He smiled more. He spent hours on his phone. He talked about finally being happy again. At first, they were relieved, but it didn't take long before strange things started happening. The woman needed help. First, it was a small emergency. Then another. Then another. Every problem somehow required money. His children tried asking questions. Who is she? Have you met her? Can we talk to her? Every answer sounded convincing. She always had a reason. She was traveling. She lost her phone. She couldn't access her bank account. She just needed a little more help. Whenever one problem disappeared, another one appeared. That's when the family decided they couldn't rely on trust anymore. They needed proof. They began checking every phone number that contacted their father, searching public records, looking for inconsistencies, trying to understand who was really on the other end of the conversation. One of the tools they used during that process was CatfishNumber.com, hoping the phone numbers would reveal information that matched the stories they were being told. Sometimes they found clues. Sometimes they found nothing at all. But one thing became clear. The stories kept changing. The excuses never stopped. And this wasn't going to be the last romance scam. It was only the beginning. By this point, his family thought the nightmare was almost over. They were wrong. The woman wasn't the only person asking him for money. Soon there was another, then another. Before long, his family believed he was talking to multiple romance scammers at the same time. Each one had a different story. One needed help traveling. Another claimed to be stuck overseas. Another promised they would finally meet him if he could just solve one last problem. Every conversation ended the same way. They needed money. His children tried everything they could think of. They warned him about romance scams. They showed him articles explaining how scammers build trust before asking for money. They contacted his bank. They spoke with doctors. They called adult protective services. Local police were notified. Even the FBI received reports. No matter what they did, nothing changed. When one bank realized what was happening, they refused to process any more suspicious transactions. For a moment, the family thought they had finally stopped the scams. Instead, he simply found another way. He started withdrawing cash, then using cryptocurrency ATMs. Money that was once easy to track suddenly became almost impossible to recover. By the time another bank stepped in, he had already learned how to work around every safeguard. According to his family, they believe he lost more than $100,000. But the money wasn't the only thing disappearing. He stopped paying his bills. His electricity was shut off. He began asking his own children for money. Not for food, not for medication, but because scammers convinced him he needed products that promised to cure his dementia. One advertisement even used an AI-generated version of a famous public figure to make the product look legitimate. He believed it. Every new phone number became another mystery. His family searched the numbers, compared names, and looked for anything that could explain who was contacting him. Sometimes they used CatfishNumber.com to check what publicly available information was connected to the numbers they found. Sometimes the details raised more questions than answers. But by then, the investigation wasn't really about exposing the scammers anymore. It was about trying to save someone who no longer believed the people closest to him. And the hardest part was still ahead. By this point, the scammers weren't the only people influencing him. He had started pushing away the people who were trying to protect him. According to his family, he blamed his own children for everything that had happened. He believed they were the reason his bank accounts were closed. He believed they had convinced doctors he had dementia. He even accused them of sabotaging phone calls and trying to keep him away from the women he believed loved him. Every attempt to help became another reason not to trust them. His family wasn't giving up. They continued documenting phone numbers, saving messages, checking names, and comparing every new story that appeared. Whenever a new person contacted him, they searched the number, looked for inconsistencies, and tried to verify whatever information they could, including checking what publicly available details were connected to the number through CatfishNumber.com. Sometimes they found clues, sometimes they didn't. But the biggest problem wasn't finding the scammers anymore. It was convincing him they were scammers. His children spoke with doctors, social workers, banks, police, adult protective services, even the FBI. Every door led to the same answer. As long as he could still make his own decisions under the law, there was very little anyone could do. Day by day, the situation became harder to watch. According to the family, he had already lost more than $100,000. He had burned through his savings. He had stopped paying important bills. And yet, he still believed the next message might finally be the one that changed everything. Romance scams rarely begin with someone asking for thousands of dollars. They begin with attention, kindness, companionship, someone who always knows exactly what to say. By the time the money starts disappearing, the emotional connection has already been built. Looking back, the family says they wish they had been able to stop it sooner. But once someone becomes emotionally invested, facts alone are often no longer enough. This story isn't just about losing money. It's about how loneliness can be exploited, how trust can be weaponized, and how a simple phone call or message can slowly change someone's entire life. If someone you care about suddenly starts hiding conversations, making excuses for someone they've never met, or sending money to repeated emergencies, don't ignore it. Ask questions, verify the information, check the phone numbers, and if you're trying to learn more about an unfamiliar number, tools like CatfishNumber.com can help you see what publicly available information may be connected to it before the situation gets even worse. Sometimes you won't find much. Sometimes you'll find the clue that changes everything. Because by the time this family realized what was happening, they weren't just trying to stop a scam, they were trying to save someone they loved. And sometimes, those are two very different battles.